Most people get out of the sauna too early. They stay in the sauna for maybe 10 minutes, they start sweating, and they call it a day. But that's just the beginning of the cardiovascular benefits. The research is quite clear. People who take the sauna regularly have less heart disease, lower blood pressure, lower risk of dementia, lower risk of respiratory tract infections, and lower risk of overall mortality. However, that particular research also is quite clear about the optimal duration and temperature to get those benefits. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the sauna timeline minute by minute, from the moment you sit down all the way until 60 minutes. You're going to know exactly when the benefits kick in, when do they peak, and at what point you start to get diminishing returns. Also, if you want to discover your own health percentile, to know what level of health you're at, with various different types of biomarkers like your fitness markers, body composition, and blood work, what are your bottlenecks and biggest weaknesses, then take the health assessment in our top 1% health community. Link in the description. Before we start with the timeline, it's important to understand what's the goal of the sauna. Basically, the sauna is a hot box that raises your body temperature above normal. Your normal body temperature is around 36 degrees Celsius. When you enter the sauna, your core temperature gradually begins to rise. This creates a mild state of hyperthermia or a fever, which activates many of the same pathways that become activated during exercise. One of the most known ones are heat shock proteins that repair misfolded proteins like amyloid. They also reduce inflammation and inhibit tumor growth. Your blood vessels dilate, your heart rate increases, and your body begins trying to cool itself by producing sweat. Many of the benefits associated with sauna are simply the body's adaptation to this temporary heat stress. The longer you remain in the sauna, the higher your body temperature will rise, and the stronger these adaptations become up to a certain point. Chronically high body temperature, like a fever, is obviously bad for you. Now, I also know that many people will write in the comments, Bryan Johnson said you need to sit in a super hot sauna at 93 degrees Celsius or 200 Fahrenheit for over 30 minutes to get your core temperature to 39 degrees Celsius, which is when you supposedly get the benefits of heat shock proteins. Now, I'm going to address this immediately because many people saw the post and they're obviously going to ask from me as well, what do I think about it? First, there is no universally accepted threshold of exactly 39 degrees Celsius where heat shock proteins switch on. Heat shock proteins increase progressively as the core temperature rises around 38 degrees Celsius, not 39, and they continue increasing with greater heat exposure. It's a dose-response relationship, not an on and off switch. Secondly, the amount of time it takes to reach a given core temperature varies tremendously between people. One important detail is that Bryan Johnson's body temperature is often around 34 to 35 degrees Celsius. That's substantially below the typical adult body temperature. A person starting at a more typical body temperature, like 36.5 to 37 degrees Celsius, simply doesn't need to spend as much time in the sauna to experience meaningful heat stress. The Finnish studies are also quite clear about the temperature benefits. You don't need to sit in 90 degrees Celsius to get the benefits. Your body temperature will begin rising even at around 70 degrees Celsius or 158 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the temperature all the sauna studies are based on. It's also been found that sauna temperatures over 100 degrees Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit are linked to a small but significantly higher risk of dementia over 20 years. But lower temperatures are protective against dementia. Now that this is out of the way, let's get on with the actual timeline of sauna benefits. It's gonna be a lot more easier and realistic. After 5 minutes, most people start to sweat. Exactly when this happens depends on the temperature, the humidity, and the person's core temperature, as well as their hydration status. Although the amount isn't enormous, regular sweating through the sauna appears to contribute to the excretion of compounds such as arsenic, cadmium, lead, and mercury, as well as potentially microplastics. It's not that thoroughly studied yet, but sweating via the sauna also appears to excrete microplastics and different types of pollutants. In today's world, we're exposed to a lot more pollutants like air pollution, household chemicals, pesticides, microplastics, heavy metals everywhere. So we would need a practice where we excrete these things more on a regular basis. We might not have needed to do that in the past, but in the modern world, it's a lot more beneficial to sweat on a regular basis. Not just with exercise, but also with the sauna. At the same time, your blood vessels begin dilating and your heart rate gradually starts increasing as your body temperature rises. At this point, a person's body temperature might have risen from 36 degrees to 36.5 degrees. By around 12 minutes, your cardiovascular system has become a lot more active. Right now, you would feel your heart rate being about 30 to 40 beats higher than what's normal. That's because the increase in body temperature mimics some of the benefits of exercise, and it's like light cardio or speed walking. This is one of the reasons regular sauna use improves cardiovascular fitness and lowers resting heart rate. That's what explains the consistent finding that sauna use is associated with reduced risk of heart disease and hypertension. They're basically doing light exercise while sitting in the sauna. At this point, a person's body temperature might have risen from 36.5 degrees to 37 degrees. After around 15 minutes, several adaptations begin to occur. One study on Finnish athletes and non-athletes found that 15-minute sauna sessions increased several types of white blood cells involved in immune function. Interestingly, the athletes saw greater increase than non-athletes, perhaps because people who exercise have a stronger immune system to begin with. Another study found that 2 15-minute sauna sessions separated by a cooling period increased growth hormone approximately 5-fold. Growth hormone helps to preserve lean muscle mass and supports tissue repair. Now, exercise is still more effective for increasing growth hormone than the sauna, so I wouldn't replace exercise with sauna. But there is research that combining sauna with resistance training results in greater muscle mass as well as greater VO2 max. So the best way to do the sauna is together with exercise to maximize the benefits. At this point, a person's body temperature might have risen to 37.3 degrees or 37.5 degrees Celsius. After around 20 minutes, you start to reach the range that's associated with the best cardiovascular benefits. The largest observational studies on sauna use come from Finland. They found that men who used the sauna 4 to 7 times per week had a substantially lower risk of cardiovascular death than those who used it only once per week. The session duration also mattered. Compared with sessions lasting less than 11 minutes, sauna sessions lasting more than 19 minutes were associated with a lower risk of cardiovascular mortality. In terms of total duration for the week, the lowest heart disease mortality was seen at total sauna duration of more than 45 minutes per week compared to less than that. Now, this doesn't mean that the cardiovascular benefits immediately switch on at 20 minutes. These studies are observational after all, so you can't take them word to word. But it does suggest that staying in the sauna a little bit longer is better than keeping it at 10 minutes. And the main driver of that probably is that if you stay in the sauna for longer, you also stay in a period where your heart rate is elevated for longer, and you might get more heat shock protein activation through a higher body temperature. At this point, a person's body temperature might have risen to 38 degrees Celsius. By around 30 minutes, you've probably captured most of the benefits that you would get from the sauna. Your heart rate has been elevated for a meaningful amount of time, you've sweated out a meaningful amount of sweat, your core temperature has risen to a meaningful level, and you've also seen some increase in growth hormone. But at this point, you will also see better blood sugar regulation. Sauna and other forms of heat therapy can increase blood flow to skeletal muscle and thus influence glucose transporters such as GLUT4, which helps to move glucose from the bloodstream into muscle cells. Human studies suggest that regular heat therapy may improve insulin sensitivity and fasting blood sugar, particularly in people with metabolic dysfunction and type 2 diabetes. However, single sauna sessions don't improve insulin sensitivity. A 2024 randomized crossover trial on 40 minutes of infrared sauna didn't see improvements in insulin sensitivity or glucose tolerance. So it might be that for better blood sugar, you need to be taking the sauna regularly. This is an important distinction. The immediate sauna session creates some physiological stress, which ultimately leads to better adaptations, improved adaptations in your body. But the key here is repeated physiological stress. You can't expect to get the benefits from exercise from just one single exercise session. You need to be doing it regularly. All the sauna studies in Finland are based on people who take the sauna regularly, every week and almost every day. There are as many saunas as there are people in Finland, which is why it's such a big part of Finnish culture and identity. At this point, a person's body temperature might have risen to 38.5 degrees Celsius. If you stay in the sauna for up to 60 minutes, then there are studies supporting that you will see significantly higher growth hormone. For example, repeated 1-hour sauna sessions have been seen to increase growth hormone up to 16-fold. Now, I wouldn't still interpret this as the sign that you would want to sit in the sauna for 1 hour. First of all, it's quite difficult. Second of all, you needed to do the sauna sessions multiple times. And third of all, by doing it so long, you can also raise your body temperature too high. At this point, a person's body temperature might have risen to 39 to 39.5 degrees Celsius, which is a significant fever. You're continuing to lose water, sodium, and other electrolytes through your sweat. As dehydration increases, blood volume falls, and your heart has to work harder to maintain circulation. This can cause dizziness, low blood pressure, headaches, heart palpitations, and in more serious cases, heat exhaustion or heat stroke. The risk is higher if you've been dehydrated before, like you did exercise before, you drank alcohol, you haven't drank that much water, taken certain medications, etc. More sauna isn't always better. Chronic or excessive heat shock protein activation is actually bad. Like with many things in your body, it can promote growth and survival of malignancies, because the malignant cells get used to the heat and they become more resilient. The purpose of the sauna is to create temporary heat stress that switches on your immune system, lowers inflammation, increases your heart rate and your body temperature. If the session is too long, too exhausting, too hot, too dehydrating, then the stress can exceed the benefits. You don't want that. Based on the research and my personal experience, I think most people should stay within the 15 to 30 minute range at approximately 70 to 90 degrees Celsius. Beginners can start with 10 to 15 minutes at 70 degrees Celsius and gradually increase their tolerance. Here's a final summary of the timeline. 5 minutes, you start to sweat. 12 minutes, your heart rate is significantly increased. 15 minutes, your immune system gets activated and growth hormone increases. 20 minutes, you start to see significant cardiovascular benefits. 20 to 30 minutes, most of the heat shock proteins get activated. 30 minutes, blood sugar dips, and over 60 minutes, the risk begins to outweigh the benefits. So optimally stay around 20 minutes and don't overexhaust yourself with too high temperature. Alright, thanks for watching. If you want to discover your health percentage and get your roadmap to top 1% of health, then join the community using the link in the description. I'll see you there.